Today, we have such a deep topic, and so many of you wrote in about this. It's all about letting go. Now, I dealt with this so much in my life. I had such a problem with this. So, when I was finally able to start letting things go, it transformed everything for me. And I'm going to share that with you today, exactly how to do it. But I thought first we would talk about what does it mean to let go? Because the definition alone, a lot of people don't understand. Letting go is releasing yourself from things that are beyond your control. Let me ask you a few questions. Have you ever been so frustrated with the situation, you're just ready to give up, ready to throw in the towel? You want so badly to change someone or something, and no matter what you do, it just doesn't work. You use so much mental and emotional energy, and things just don't seem to be progressing at all. Now, here is the terrifying thing. Here is the kicker. They may never, and they probably won't ever, live up to your expectations. Everything in life falls under two categories. This is so simple, super easy, right? Things we can control and things we can't. We take actions where possible in the first category, and we let go of the things that fall into the second category. What is easier than that? Sounds so simple, right? The problem is we always blur the line that separates those two things. Letting go is removing anxiety and worry and other negative feelings over circumstances or people that we can't change. When we're focused on who we've been and the decisions that we've made in the past, we always lose track of our authentic self here in the present. And this is our power position right now. The process of letting go of the past and embracing change allows us to engage fully, some of us for the very first time, not only in our own lives, but allows us to engage fully in our own healing. I'm Brent Webb, and this is Mind Power Secrets Live. Now, some of you out there are probably saying, I just can't do it. I can't get out of my head. I can't let go. Well, here's what I used to do. I would try to change my thoughts. So if I had a thought like, I'm going to fail this test, I'll just change that thought to, I'm going to get an A on this test. I have a negative thought. I replace it with a positive one. Wow, it's easy, easy peasy. Here's the problem with this scenario. And so many people say to do this. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. Are we going to do that 60,000 times? Of course not. Now, children already know how to let go. Kids, they throw temper tantrums. They don't hide their emotions. They let it out right then and there. But then eventually, somewhere in our past, somewhere in our life, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's our parents, maybe it's our peer group, society tells us to keep that to yourself. You've heard these before. Big girls don't cry. Men got to be tough. They got to bottle it up. Now, of course, there's some truth to the fact that you don't want to be emotionally fragile 24/7, but there is strength and security that is valuable beyond anything you know of when you tap into this. Now, most people are on the extreme end of bottling it up and keeping it in. So giving yourself the permission that it's not only okay for you, but it's beneficial for you, that it's encouraged from your higher self to let go of the things, the people, the beliefs, the emotions that no longer serve us. That way, we make room for what we want in our life, for the energy that we want, for the relationships, for the frequencies we want to be in, for the opportunities, for the new us. Those opportunities just waiting to be revealed. The secret is that it's not necessarily getting rid of negative thoughts or emotions or beliefs or your stories. It's about the length of time you've been holding on to them in the first place. That's what affects you the most. You also know that letting go is not hard. You've done it in the past. You've just been conditioned out of it. And now that you know that letting go of the lower vibes makes you able to release and tap into your natural state, and our natural state is love and joy and peace. I mean, no one comes out of the womb in a state of anger or fear or guilt or shame. Right? They're also not racist or homophobic or sexist either. Now, you might be asking, how do I change my emotional state? Especially if you're stuck down there in those low vibes. Letting go sounds so easy, but it so often gets overcomplicated. It gets confusing, and it doesn't have to be that way. Today, I'm going to simplify it so that even if you are a complete beginner on your spiritual journey, by the end of this training tonight, you'll be able to let go of something that you've been holding on to for far too long. You'll know exactly what you need to do every step of the way. And more importantly, you'll finally understand why you need to do it. That was inspired by the work of David Hawkins and his incredible book, Letting Go. Now, Hawkins developed a scale of consciousness, which I know it sounds a little intimidating. It sounds a little scary, but don't worry. It's basically a scale of emotions from most painful and destructive to most pleasant and productive. At the bottom, we have things like shame and grief and fear, things that we generally try to avoid feeling. Now, in the middle, we have kind of, let's say, neutral things like willingness and courage. And then on the top, we have the things that most of us want more than anything else in our lives, things like joy and love and peace. Now, why is it that so many people seem to get stuck in these lower emotions? Like the famous saying goes, perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. You see, the vast majority of people are going through their day-to-day lives completely unaware of the emotional undercurrents that are actually controlling them. So they try to add things to their life, add things to feel better, instead of focusing on taking away the bad thing that is causing the problem. We need to let go of the negative emotional patterns that we're carrying within ourselves. We tend to live in this world of thought. It's very rational and it's very logical, right? But here's the scary thing. Our thoughts are heavily influenced by our emotions. In fact, most of us connect them together. For example, you're at a family dinner and you ask somebody to pass you the salt, and you make eye contact with the person who made the food. Maybe they look a little PO'd, right? Maybe they make some comment under their breath like, oh, the food's not good enough for you. Maybe you just like salt. In fact, you oversalt everything. It's your habit. In fact, thinking about this, my mom puts pepper on everything before she even tastes the food. So I understand. The cook's mindset is a symptom of those deep emotional undercurrents that are actually controlling a lot of our thoughts and our actions. Subconsciously, we don't even realize what's happening. Here's another example. You're in this relationship that you are so invested in. You thought, man, this is the last relationship I'm ever going to have. This is my soulmate. It's going to last forever. And then one day, everything implodes. Everything falls apart. And your ex breaks your heart. So now you're going to have a handful of negative emotions that you associate with that event. You're going to have some grief. You're going to have some anger, maybe a dash of shame, embarrassment. You're definitely going to have sadness. Now, each of those emotions are going to burst forth with a bunch of related thoughts. Why did they leave? Am I not good enough? Did I say something wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Now, if I didn't do A, B, or C, then this wouldn't have happened. Eventually, all of these different thoughts kind of weave together and form a fabric. They form a story that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves the story to make sense of what happened. Maybe you settle on this. They left me because I wasn't a good cook. Okay, just say that's the example here. That's why the breakup happened. Great. We'll file it away. We'll move on, right? Guess what? It doesn't work like that. If it did, we wouldn't need to let go of anything. It would be great, but here's the problem. Let's say you're having a family dinner 15 years later. Somebody asked you to pass the salt. All of a sudden, you're going to feel a sting of pain and shame and sadness because you stored those thoughts with the feelings and they come up together. This happens for everything you store that way. Why is my cooking not good enough for you? How could you be so ungrateful? Of course, the pain has nothing to do with the dinner. It's not about the salt. Your ex leaving you likely had nothing to do with the cooking. And the person asking for the salt, again, just like salt maybe, we can experience a completely neutral event as a personal attack because all because of the way we have internalized all of those thoughts, all of those feelings, and all of those stories about our past. Now, in order to untangle that giant knot that we have inside us, in order to let go, we need to get back to the source. We need to get back to that emotion that we felt before we came up with all these thoughts and all these stories to explain it away. Now, the letting go method I'm going to teach you today is so easy, and there are 4 very simple steps. So let's get started. The very first step of letting go is simply asking yourself, what am I feeling? If you are tuned into this training tonight, chances are there is something or many, many things that you'd like to get rid of. Maybe it's pain from a relationship or fear about your new career, or maybe anger over something that happened when you were a child. All of those are perfectly valid, but they also might be symptomatic of something deeper, just like the salt thing. So don't focus so much on what you feel you need to let go of, okay? So don't focus on what you think you need to let go of, not in this first step. Just focus on what you feel. Most people tend to try to repress these feelings or distract themselves. But when you actually acknowledge them, there's something amazing that happens. Remember that scale of consciousness? Well, here's the cool thing. Right here in the middle, we have courage. Courage is the place where things go from being bad to being good. They go from being negative and destructive to positive and constructive. When most of us are going through our lives trying not to feel these negative emotions, trying to repress them or blame them on other people, we end up feeling shame for our anger. We end up feeling angry over feeling sad. We can trap ourselves in a loop where we have negative emotions about our negative emotions. But again, here's the cool thing, and this leads to step 2. When you simply consider taking the action of allowing yourself to feel your feelings, you instantly move up to courage because you're no longer hiding from your feelings. You're thinking to yourself, well, you know what? I'm able to take this on. I can feel this and it'll be okay. You are no longer trapped in the emotional pattern. Instead, you are now observing it from a courageous place, from a place of power. Step 2 is just asking yourself, can I let myself feel this? And you just say, you know what? I'm going to take 10 minutes. I'm going to surrender to this emotion. I'm going to breathe through it. And we'll just see what happens. And then this is something that's a little hard to explain in words because it's more feeling based. But just notice your physicality. Notice if you have an upset stomach or a tightness in your chest. Notice if your posture is hunched forward. Notice the physicality of the feeling and then just sit there with it. Breathe with it. Just let it be. Now, I want to be clear here. This could be a little painful. You might cry. You might get angry. You might laugh. You might feel happy. That's good. It's 10 minutes of allowing your emotions to run their course without any interference or judgment on your part. So you let go of any fear or guilt or shame or negative emotion you might feel about having negative emotions. You're just there to see what happens as you're consciously letting the energy out of that emotion. But remember, the cool thing, as soon as you choose to let yourself feel whatever it is that you're feeling, you automatically move up on the chart. You jump from that lower part all the way to willingness or maybe acceptance. As soon as you choose to let yourself feel those emotions, you begin the process of letting them go. Remember, each of these emotions can have thousands of connected thoughts because that is how our brains work. We try to rationalize and explain the emotions away so we'll never have to feel them again. So as you go through this process, you might find yourself coming up with, oh, this is because of that, or this had to do with that thing, or this is because of that person. That's progress. Allow yourself that introspection. Now, step 3 of this process is to stay with that feeling. Don't over-intellectualize. It's not about rationalizing. It's not about explaining. It's not about blaming. It's about letting all of that go. That said, don't get caught up in judging yourself or having thoughts about what might have happened or rationalizations or explanations. It's what our brains are kind of hardwired to do. So don't worry too much if you have these thoughts. Just don't attach to them. Don't attach the feeling to them. Don't give them any meaning. Don't give them any story. Just realize they're just potential explanations. Maybe that's interesting, but let that go and focus on the emotion itself, because that is what we're interested in. We're working on undoing the massive knot of feelings and emotions and ideas and stories and BS. So every time you're going through this process and you feel like, oh, I understand that pent-up anger was because I got embarrassed at work that one time, realize that that's actually just one tiny bit of this giant, massive, tied up knot inside you. And the reason you got embarrassed at work had to do with something else. And that had to do with something else. And that had to do with something else. And that had to do with something else, all the way back to childhood. At the deepest level, the vast majority of our negative thoughts, of our negative feelings, our negative stories, they all come back to childhood trauma, to childhood survival instincts. But we end up using this incredible supercomputer that we've all been given, the human mind, to rationalize and explain everything so that it makes sense to us. But sometimes we do this in a really twisted way. That's why we can experience somebody not liking our cooking as a personal attack that has very real emotional pain, because it's pulling on this thread that has all of these different twists and turns. But the other end has some deep childhood trauma about feeling unworthy or unloved. And now, whenever somebody pulls on that thread marked cooking, it triggers the other end, which is that childhood fear of abandonment. Now, the more we go through this process of sitting with the feeling and letting ourselves actually feel, letting the energy out from it, the more we start to realize it's just an emotion. It's not personal. And this brings us to step 4, which will naturally progress as you go through this process of letting go. As we notice more and more that a lot of our negative thoughts and emotions and stories have their roots in this kind of emotional knot, which tracks all the way back to childhood, we start to realize that maybe these things didn't all mean what we thought they meant. Maybe it wasn't the cooking. Maybe we were a little clingy and insecure because we were afraid of being abandoned. Or maybe that ex of ours was a little afraid of getting locked down because they're afraid of people trying to control them because of something that happened in their childhood. Maybe it had almost nothing to do with us at all. Maybe it was just two emotional knots fighting it out. We didn't understand what was happening, so we took it personally. So often in life, we have stories that hold us back, stories we tell ourselves, stories that most of the time aren't true. I'm not smart. I'm not creative. I'm too fat. I can't do that. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. We make those stories into our identity, and then they become ingrained belief patterns, become very, very difficult to change. That's when we say, I am this way. I don't do that, or I do this. Once that story becomes part of who we think we are, once that story becomes part of how we know that the world works, well, it's hard to change. And you know, there's a lot of people out there with real problems, but also there's a lot of people out there who create their own real problems through the stories they tell themselves, the stories they choose to believe about themselves. So as we realize that many of these stories are simply part of this emotional knot, of this emotional trauma, we begin to stop identifying so much with our previous limitations. And that is the final step, my friends. Step 4 is stop identifying so strongly with your negative thoughts, feelings, and stories. Let's say you're feeling sad. If you're taking it personally, if you're identifying too strongly with your feeling, you're going to think, oh, I want to distract myself from this. What can I do? Maybe I'll go shopping, retail therapy. Maybe I'll eat. Maybe I'll binge my favorite show on Netflix. Anything to take my mind off the fact that I'm sad. But if you're not taking that sadness personally, you're going to notice it just as something that's there. I'm feeling sad. That's interesting. Let's explore it. One way lets the sadness kind of fester and hide in the dark, and it stays there. And the other way, it bumps us right back up to courage or willingness or acceptance. As we face the fact that sadness is there, we don't take it personally. It doesn't mean we're a bad person. It's just there. No judgments. Once we start to let go of some of the energy that is wrapped up in those negative emotions that we've been storing inside us, we can start to see them for what they are. It's like shining a light on the monster inside the closet and realizing it's just a coat. The vast majority of people are convinced that there is a monster, and they spend their whole lives trying to hide from it. But once you see that it's just a coat, you start to think it's kind of silly. So ask yourself, what am I feeling? Spend some time sitting with it. Allow yourself to actually feel it, and don't focus so much on the rationalization or the explanation, but just the feeling. It doesn't matter why you're feeling this. It matters that you're feeling this. So focus on letting the energy out instead of coming up with explanations. And then finally, as you're going through this process, don't over-identify with those negative thoughts, those negative stories, those negative emotions. They're not personal. They don't mean, again, that you're a bad person. They're just there, and you're just experiencing them and then letting them go. In the end, the goal is for us to experience reality as it is, instead of this twisted perspective based on these warped layers of thought and feelings and stories, so that when somebody asks you for the salt, you'll think they probably just want salt. And it's not an attack on your value as a human being, which when you say it out loud sounds completely ridiculous. So many of these things are. When you finally drag them into the light, they can't stand up to the scrutiny. Until you realize that all of us do this all of the time, until you learn to truly let go, you'll be in a never-ending loop that makes it impossible to manifest real, lasting change in your life. I also want to remind you to join my free Facebook community. Over 10,000 people. They are there, banded together. They are on their path of awakening, sharing knowledge, inspiring, empowering each other. I'm there each and every day as well. The teachings are deep. It's absolutely free, and it is a private group. If you'd like an invite, go to brentsgroup.com. You get your invite. You can come in, take a look around. There is fantastic transformation happening there. There's nothing to buy. You don't have to take a course. You don't have to walk on hot coals. You don't have to sit in a cave and meditate for 10 hours. What you need is inside you. You just have to learn how to unlock it. So we'd love to have you as a member. Come take a look. Go to brentsgroup.com. Finally, we have something new coming out next month. This is your last chance. If you don't have a copy of my book, 5 Steps to the Perfect Mindset, why not grab a copy now? It's absolutely free. It's the 5 things you need to know to get started, the 5 things you need to know to take control of your mindset. Everything in life, it's a problem. Almost everything is a mindset thing. So when you understand how to control your mind, you completely transform your reality. You transform your life. Get your copy today. Go to successsecrets.net, successsecrets.net. And finally, remember, we're here each and every Wednesday, same time. Remember that? Same bat time, same bat channel. Probably don't remember that. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time each and every Wednesday for the Mind Power Secrets live podcast. Each and every week, a different topic. We take your questions. We go deep to give you the tools that you need to make that transformation. Stop waiting. It is your time. Don't go completely through your life, never understanding there is so much more than what you're living. Every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have any questions or comments, drop them below this video. Send them to us in the Facebook community or on my website. I really appreciate you taking time. I know there's so many things to do, especially now. Our attention span is 7 seconds. 7 seconds. So giving me your time tonight, I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you found some knowledge here that's going to change your life. It changed mine. Letting go is absolutely mission critical. You have to do it. You have to clear the slate. You have to make room for the new amazing things you want in your life. And to do that, you've got to get rid of that old, broken, rusted programming you have inside. That's what we show you how to do. All right. Have a great week. I'll see you back here next Wednesday. Don't worry. Be happy. Feel good. See you then.